Hello team, welcome back. So today we are going to discuss about the Jenkins architecture. So we will learn about the theory of the master and slave architecture of the Jenkins. So basically Jenkins is a distributed system, right? In the Jenkins we have the two things, the master and the slaves. The master is the Jenkins itself and we will learn about the slaves in the coming tutorial, right? So let's find out and let's see what is the role of the master. Okay, so master is basically is used to schedule the build job, right? What is the job, what is build, these terms are new for us, right? So we will learn about these things in this tutorial, right? So very first, the job is something which is executable, right? So master is responsible to schedule the build job, right? It may be periodic or it may be after some particular action, or it may be just on click event, right? So master is responsible to schedule the build job. Okay, dispatches the builds to the slave for actual job execution. So master itself not execute the complete flow, master itself not execute the job. Okay, it dispatch the builds or it dispatch the jobs to the slave for the actual execution. Okay, and the execution is happen on the slave machine. So for example, we can take an example, right? So suppose you have a job to execute your UI test cases, either the UFT or Selenium, right? So you have connected the slave with the Jenkins and you are executing your test cases with the help of the Jenkins. So actually you triggered the job on Jenkins, but where the execution is being happening? Execution is not being happening on the server side. Execution is being happening on some of the VM or some of the machine which is connected to the Jenkins, right? So actual execution of the job will happen on the slave sides, right? Then another is monitor the slaves and recording the build results. So basically with the help of the Jenkins, we can monitor the slaves, we can monitor the jobs, we can record the results of the builds and result of the jobs, right? And what is the slave? So slave, when we connect the slave, so it is just a Java code, okay? So basically Java is required for the Jenkins. We have already seen when we have configured the Jenkins, then we have configured the Jenkins over a system. So very first check was the Java 8 should be enabled on my machine, right? So basically slave is just a Java code which will execute on any machine which is on the same network and it will connect to your Jenkins, right? So we'll see all these things, how the things are working over here, right? So slave is being used to execute the jobs dispatched by the master. So master will decide which job should go to which slave, right? And it will dispatch the job and the dispatch job will execute on the slave itself, right? Now we will talk about the job and we will talk about the slave. So job is something new for us. So what is the Jenkins job? So guys, Jenkins job refers to runnable tasks that are controlled and monitored by the Jenkins. So any task which is executable, which is runnable is called the job. It could be anything. Suppose you are deploying your deployment over the cloud on AWS, on Google Cloud, then you can set up a job for that. You want to build your project with the help of the Gradle or Maven, you can set up a job for that. You want to execute some kind of SQL on some server, right? So you can execute a job for that, right? So what is the job? So right now maybe these things are not related, but once we go through and we go further in this particular course, so I will show you everything, how what is the job and how they will execute and what is the what I mean to execute the job on the slaves, right? So job is something which is a runnable task and which is controlled and monitored by the Jenkins, right? Now what is the slave, or in other words we can also say node. Okay, so don't confuse if somebody is saying Jenkins node, then he's talking about the Jenkins slave, right? So node is a popular word in the current IT world, right? So node is when somebody is saying the Jenkins node, then he's talking about the Jenkins slave. So what is slave and what is node? So slaves are computers that are set up to build project for a master. So basically slave are the computers, they are the VMs, they are the cloud machines, which is basically set up to build the project to execute that particular task, right? For a master. So command will fire from the master, okay? Master will dispatch the job to the connected client and that job will execute on the connected client. Then it will get back the result to the master and master will restore that result for you. Okay, so this is the complete workflow of the Jenkins job. Now let's talk some more points about the Jenkins slave. So Jenkins runs separate program, okay, called slave agent on the slaves. So how the basically how the slaves are connected with the Jenkins, how Jenkins will identify that this is the slave or this is the node which is connected to me. So there is a simple, very simple tiny program. It's a Java program which is called slave agent. We need to execute the slave agent on a machine which in the same network where your Jenkins server is, so that your Jenkins server can communicate to that particular machine. Okay, and your Jenkins server will call the master, and the machine which you are connecting to your Jenkins server is called the slave. Okay, when slaves are registered to the master, a master start distributing the load to the slave. Okay, so basically when we are executing any job, then we can decide either your Jenkins master can choose the slave randomly as per the availability, or either you can provide the hard coded slave. Okay, this particular job should execute on this particular slave, right? If your slave is not available, this is disconnected from a Jenkins job, then your master will mark the job as a failed, right? Node, or I mean to say the slave, is used to refer all machines that are the part of Jenkins grid, slave and master. Right? So we have already discussed the complete network. Master is the Jenkins server or your Jenkins machine, which is Jenkins server, and slave are the machines or the computer, the VMs or the cloud machines, which is basically connected to your Jenkins master with the help of the slave agents. Okay, I will show you how what is the Jenkins, how we can connect the slave with the Jenkins and all, right? So don't confuse with these terms. Now there is something else which is called executor. So on a single slave you can define n number of executor, right? On a single slave you can define n number of executors. So very first, before going to discuss it in details, very first discuss what is executor. So guys, executor is a separate stream of builds to be run on a node in parallel. So executor is something which is a stream of builds. On a single node you can execute 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 plus and up to n number of jobs in a parallel, and every job is being executed by a single executor, right? So executor is just like a thread. If you are comfortable in the Java, you are comfortable with the technical terms, then executor is a thread which is executing a single job on a slave. Okay, and we can invoke multiple threads or multiple executors on a single node or on a single slave. Okay, they slaves, or sorry, they threads and the executor can execute the different jobs or a job stream on a parallel in a single node as per the capacity of my machine. So if I will say, then with my Jenkins server I have connected the 4 GB cloud machines, right? 4 GB RAM cloud machines, and at the time I am comfortably execute 50 executors on a single node. Okay, if I'm executing more than 50 executors, then it may hang. Okay, and the same thing also depend on the type of task your machine is performing, right? Suppose let's take an example. I have defined 20 executor on a single node machine. Okay, which node machine has the hardware configuration which has the 100 GB hard disk, okay, 4 GB RAM and Core i4 processor. Okay, so there are 4 CPU, 4 GB machine, 100 GB hard disk, and I have assigned 20 executor to it. So if I am just executing something like I need to create the file, read the file and delete the file, then all 20 executor can execute in parallel, right? But if I have the job something like on that particular slave, I need to execute some UFT test cases. Okay, I need to execute some process which can require at least 2 GB RAM, right? So if a single process is executing in a 2 GB RAM, then how is it possible to execute more than 2 or more than 4 processes on the same machine? Although the 20 executor is available for that machine, but as per my requirement, a single executor is executing a single job, and that single process is taking at least 2 GB memory. And what is the available memory of that machine? 4 GB. So at most 2 threads can execute. So although the 20 executor is available on that machine, but we can execute only 2, or the machine is capable to execute only 2. So these all things are depend on the hardware configuration and the type of work what we want to do, right? But what is the executor? Executor is a stream or a separate stream of builds to be run on a node in a parallel. So we can assume the executors are the thread which will be run on the machine, right? A node can have one or more executors. As I told you, on a 4 GB machine, I didn't created the VM or the cloud machine which has the 8 GB, 16 GB, or 8 core CPU because they will cost you a lot. So I usually try to execute create 4 GB VM on a cloud on AWS or on Google Cloud, right? And on the 4 GB machine, I'm comfortably execute 30 to 50 executors in a time, right? So let's talk about the Jenkins plugins. So guys, you remember when we was when we configured the Jenkins, then after the download when we started the Jenkins, right? So very first step what we got is to install the recommended plugins, right? So what is plugin? So a plugin like plugins on the other system is a piece of software, is a piece of code that extends the core functionality of the core of Jenkins server. Okay, and as a Jenkins is an open source tool, so there is a lot of plugins available for the Jenkins for different kind of task. You just need to find the compatible plugin which is compatible to the Jenkins version and which will not block the other plugins. So we need, when we are installing a new plugin on my Jenkins server, we need to be take care the other plugins and the version of my Jenkins as well. Right, suppose I have 100 plugin installed on my Jenkins server and my Jenkins server is being executed, sorry, being used for the complete CI flow in my organization. And suppose suddenly I felt in need of new install a new plugin. So first I need to test that particular plugin on some other test server. That particular plugin what I'm going to install on my Jenkins server, will it block another plugin? Will it impact another plugin, or it is safe to put it on the Jenkins server? So before put any plugin on your CI server, on your Jenkins server, you first need to verify that plugin on the test server, right? And what is plugin? Plugin is just a piece of software or piece of code that extends the core functionality of your Jenkins server, right? So thank you guys. This is all about the architecture and the basic terminology of the Jenkins, right? In the coming tutorial, we will see how we can create the job in the Jenkins. Thank you guys. Thanks for your time.